Hello everyone and welcome back to our shir in Mishnah Berurah. We are holding on Mem Zayin Amud Aleph. We're in Hilchos Pesach. We're continuing Siman Tuf Nun Gimel, and we're holding in middle of the Mishnah Berurah here on Sif Aleph. We're up to the Mishnah Berurah Ois Katan Zayin. So the Mechaber had said that you're allowed to eat kitniyos on Pesach, and that's the famous shita of the Mechaber. That's why Svardim are knowing that they do eat dishes made out of kitniyos on Pesach. And the Ramah said, V'yesh Oisrim. The Ramah brought down his opinion, that he brought down from the Torah and the Hagos Maimoni and the Mordechai, that there are those that aser eating kitniyos or dishes prepared with kitniyos on Pesach. And the Ramah said, V'haminig ba'ashkenaz lahachmir. And it is the minig of the Medinos of Ashkenaz to be machmir, not to eat kitniyos on Pesach. And the Ramah said, Ve'ein l'shanais, and that's what we're up to in the Mishnah Berurah. The Mishnah Berurah says, Nice cotton zayin ve'ein l'shanais, va'afilu ba'achrein shal Pesach gam kein ein lahakal bazeh. The Mishnah Berurah says over here that we're not even makel on the last day of Yom Tov, an Achron Shel Yom Tov, which is only D'Rabbanan, and therefore there are some kulas that we are noyig on Achron Shel Pesach. But over here the Ramah says even on Achron Shel Pesach we would not be makel with kitniyos. However, b'shas adchak she'en la'adam ma lechol. If it's a shas adchak, if it's a pressing time, and there are people who don't have what else to eat. If you look here in the Sharitzion in nice cotton vav brings down from the Chayodam and v'chein kasav Rav Yavitz v'ayin sham sheherich v'chein yadua she'etiru chachmei hadar kama pa'amim b'shnei batzeres. He says that there were many times that there was a hunger. It was a year of hunger, and during a year of hunger, the G'dalei Adar were matir to eat kitniyos. So over here, the Mishnah Berurah says, if it's a shas adchak she'en la'adam alechel, if people don't have enough to eat, morta lavashel kol haminim, you could prepare dishes out of all of these different types of kitniyos, chutz mechameshes minei dagon, but you cannot make them out of the 5 species of grain, because that you have to be afraid is going to become chametz. But when we're dealing with kitniyos, over there you can, something like rice, corn, beans. If you don't have what to eat, you could use kitniyos on Pesach. Nevertheless, even in such cases where you're going to be matir the use of kitniyos, yaktim kitniyos la'oiris v'doichen v'retzka, you have to be careful what you pick to use. We would be matir first something like beans, something like corn, something will take a kitniyos before something like rice or millet. Shehem daimim yoser l'chamisha minim, because rice and millet, these are things that are more similar to the chameshes minei dagon. They're more similar to the 5 species of grain, so there's more room. V'shayich b'hu tfei lemigzar. There's more of a reason to be geyser and to make a decree not to use these species because they're too similar to the chameshes minei dagon. Let's remember, we said yesterday, what's one of the reasons for the gzeir of kitniyos, why we don't eat kitniyos? Because kitniyos is very similar to a grain. People grind it up, they make flour out of it, and people might get confused. They might say, oh, if you're allowed to make cornbread and eat cornbread on Pesach, maybe you could make barley bread and eat barley bread on Pesach, or maybe even wheat bread. So we don't want such a mistake, chas v'chalila, to happen. That's why we have a gzeira against eating kitniyos. So if you have to be matir, if you have to make an exception, and you have to permit the use of kitniyos because of shas adchak, you want to use a species of kitniyos that's not so similar to the chamishes minei dagon. Upashit tehu adin l'chayla. The Mishnah Berurah continues and he says, obviously, for an ill person, av she'ein boi sakana, even if it's a chayla she'ein boi sakana, somebody who's not in danger, the mutter lavashalai im tzarech lazeh. You're allowed to cook and prepare kitniyos for a chayla she'ein boi sakana. If he needs it for his health, for some reason he needs it to eat, he's allowed to eat kitniyos. This comes up also very often for babies. When it comes to baby formula, there are different types of formula that have kitniyos in them. I myself experienced this, where I had a baby that was only able to ingest one specific type of formula, and that formula was was made out of kitniyos. Over there, you could even argue it's not a chayla she'ein boi sakana. It might even be worse than that. the baby's not going to drink. If the baby's really not going to drink anything else, that already would be yesh by sakana. But even for a chayla she'ein by sakana, you could prepare and he could eat kitniyos. Ella, however, the tzarich livdaik, we would have to check the kitniyos carefully. The livrar yafe, and to pick through it very well, bediktuk heitev, taking great care. Shala yimatzu bam garinim mechameshes mine dagon. Another reason we said for the gzeira of kitniyos is because we were afraid very often they would have actual grain from the chameshes mine dagon mixed in with the kitniyos. So if you're going to use kitniyos because it's a shasat chak, you have to make sure to go through and to check the kitniyos very carefully to make sure that there isn't real grain mixed in there. The Kasav Chasam Seif b'Tshuva Siman Kuf Chav Beis. Chasam Seif writes in the Tshuva, "Da'afilu b'makom sheyesh lahatir." Even when we're going to be matir and make an exception, and we're going to be matir the use of kitniyos, mikol makom yachletenu lechatchila b'roischin. Chasam Seif says what we should first do is scald the kitniyos with boiling water. Right away pour boiling water over the kitniyos, because we're going to see later that when you take grain and you scald it with boiling water, that stops the chimus process from beginning. So if you have to use kitniyos, scald it with boiling water first so that it can't possibly become chametz. The chol ma de efshel osakin misakninon, because the Chasam Sofer says whatever we can do to be misakin, whatever we can do to prevent a problem, we do. Now, just to be clear, it's not that we're worried that the kitniyos is going to become chametz. Kitniyos, we said, does not become chametz. That's not why we don't eat kitniyos. We don't eat kitniyos because there might be grain mixed in that does become chametz. So therefore, the Chasam Sofer is saying, if you have this kitniyos that you're going to use on Pesach, scald it with boiling water, so in case there is dagon mixed in, together with the kitniyos, you won't have a potential chametz problem. The Chai Adam also brings down a similar idea that you should scald it with boiling water before you use it. Okay, we're up to Ois Katan Ches. The Ramah had said, let's go back into the Ramah here. On 2 lines from the bottom, the Ramah says, Mihu, Pashat de'ein oisrim b'di eved im naflu toich hatavshil. The Ramah says, obviously we're not going to prohibit a dish that was prepared on Pesach if a little kitniyos fell into that dish. Says the Mishnah Berurah Nais Katan Chesim Naflu, the Bahal loy na'agu lahachmir. The Chavetz Chaim says they were never noyeg to be machmir. The custom never became to be machmir on taruvis of kitniyos. So if a little kitniyos fell into a dish on Pesach, we're not going to aser that dish. When we come Mokaim, however, Oisan Gargarin Shamoitzin, if you do find some grains of kitniyos, you find some a few pieces of rice mixed into your stew on Pesach, you do have to take out those grains of rice. Tzarich lezarkan, you have to throw them out. Im loy she'enoi nicker, unless they're totally not nicker, if they're totally not recognizable, then you don't have to worry about it. But if you have recognizable grains of rice in there, you have to pick them out. Otherwise, if a little rice fell into a stew, you saw that 3 or 4 grains of rice fell into a stew, you don't have to worry about it. We're not going to aser the dish. Ice cut and test, teicha tavshil, umayri sheyesh al kol panim roiv beheter. However, the Mishnah Berurah does say, obviously we're talking about a case here where the majority of the dish is heter. So you were cooking something, and the majority of it are things that are mutter for use on Pesach, and a little bit, a minority, a small portion of kitniyos fell in. But if that's not the case, if it's a majority of kitniyos, dim loikein, loy mikri taruvais klal, that's not called a mixture. If you have a majority of kitniyos, we're not going to look at this anymore as being a mixture of kitniyos. Now if you're going to eat that dish, we're going to say that you're eating rice. So we're not going to be matir it if it's roiv rice. If the majority is kitniyos, we're not going to be matir the dish. But if a small amount, a minority amount of kitniyos fell in, it's not going to aser the dish. Okay, now we go back up to the Ramah on the bottom line by the Ois Katan Yud for the Mishnah Berurah. Says the Ramah, V'chein, similarly, mutter lahadlik bishmanim hanasim mehem. You're allowed to light, if you need a lamp, you're allowed to light using the oils of kitniyos. Says the Mishnah Berurah, nice cut. Yod v'chein mutar lahadlik. Ritzaynai loymar. What the Ramah is telling you here is, afilu lasasu aisam mikaydem b'mayim. Even if you took kitniyos and you soaked it in water as part of the process of getting oil out of the kitniyos, you first soaked the kitniyos in water. And this is something that would cause the 5 species of grain to become chametz. If you took wheat and you soaked wheat, it would become chametz. Now you took kitniyos and you soaked kitniyos. So let's say peanuts. According to Rav Moshe, for sure, according to a lot of poskim, peanuts are not considered kitniyos because they were never included in the gzeira of kitniyos. So let's say somebody soaked peanuts to make peanut oil. So now you would think maybe it's a greater problem because now you soak them, maybe that will cause chimutz. It's not a problem. There's no problem with kitniyos at all other than achila. So if you're, well, the truth is, I picked a bad example. Why did I pick peanuts? Peanuts is not kitniyos. Excuse me. Take that back. Not peanuts. Something that is kitniyos. You took something that is kitniyos. You took corn and you soaked corn in order to process it, to get oil out of it, to have corn oil, and you want to light a lamp from corn oil. You're not going to eat the corn oil. You're not going to fry your latkes in the corn oil, but you want to light a lamp out of corn oil. So you soaked the corn. Says the Mishnah Berurah, the Ramah says it's not a problem. You're allowed to light using corn oil. And says the Mishnah Berurah, you could even soak the corn and you don't have to worry about chimutz, and you're allowed to use this oil because it's mutar b'hana. The only isser of kitniyos, the only isser that the minig of kitniyos has is an isser achila, not an isser hana. So the Ramah said, "V'chein mutar lahadlik b'shman manasim behem." You could light lamps for light purposes using the oils of kitniyos. The Ramah continues on the bottom line near the end, "Ve'enon oisrin im naflu l'sayich hatavshil," and you don't have to worry that maybe a little corn oil from this corn oil lamp might fall into your food. Says the Mishnah Berurah, nice cut in Yod Aleph. Veinan Eisrenim, Ritzayna Loimar. What the Ramah wants to say over here is, Shein Sarach Ledakdek. You don't have to take care. Litlais Haner Shel Shemen B'Makom Rachaik Min Hashulchan. You don't have to say to yourself, oh, if I'm using corn oil to light a lamp, I better make sure to put that lamp far away from the food, mishum chshasha shemi yenate fal Michael, because maybe I have to worry that some of the corn oil from the lamp might drip on the food. Says the Ramah, no, you don't have to worry about that. Da'afilu nitef ein lesser, because even if a little corn oil would drip into the food, it's not going to prohibit the food. Because like we said above, there is no minig to be machmer on a taruv of kitniyos, so you don't have to worry about that. Kain mavur b'darkei Moshe, so says the darkei Moshe. U'Mesayim oid sham da'afilu. The Ramah also says over there in the darkei Moshe, U'Mesayim oid sham da'afilu kachu oisan hashumshemin she'oisin mehen hashemen b'machteshes she'koichin cham chametz. Let's say you had sesame, which is a type of kitniyos, and you wanted to make sesame oil to use for your lamp. And in order to process this sesame oil, you took the sesame, you put it into a mortar, and you took a mortar and pestle, and that's how you ground up the sesame to make the oil. And the mortar and pestle that you used is a mortar and pestle that had been used for chametz. Nami leslan ba. You still don't have to worry. You still could use this sesame to light, and not only could you use this sesame to light, you still don't have to worry, and you're allowed to put the lamp near your table. You still don't have to worry about oil dripping on the food. V'atam, the reason is, ta'afilu nisariv b'mashahu, even if a little chametz was in this mortar when you put the sesame in, batal b'shishim kaidam Pesach. The little drop of chametz that might have been in that machteshes is going to be batal b'shishim in the sesame. And you don't have to worry that the mortar is going to be nice and tam of chametz into the sesame. You don't have to worry that the sesame is going to be baileya, tam chametz from the mortar and pestle, the hatzainen ein maflit umavliah, because you're talking about cold goods. You have cold sesame in a cold mortar and pestle, so there's no transference of tam. Miu, however, this is only true when you're talking about sesame, which is not a davar charif. It's not something with a strong, sharp taste. Aval b'shemen zayis. Let's say you were trying to produce olive oil in a machteshes, in a mortar and pestle that had been used with chametz. If you now, let's say you soaked olives in this mortar, and now you're going and you're pressing the olives in this chametz stick of mortar, bevadai niklat by tam chametz. Now you are going to have tam chametz balua in these olives. The hazayis hu charif kamavur le'el b'simin taf bem zayim sivches, because we consider olives to be a davar charif. Ubedavar charif, and when we're talking about something that has a sharp taste, amrina nagav duchka dechetisha samachteshes. Once we have the duchka, once we have the pressing and the pressure of the mortar and pestle, noisenes tam bazesim. Now tam is going to come out of the mortar and it's going to go into the olives. So now you had a mortar that had blias of tam chametz in it. Now you put in a davar charif, you put in a sharp tasting olive, and you pressed it with the pestle. So now you have duchka of the machteshes. So now you have those two ingredients together, the pressure, the pressing of the mortar and pestle, and you have the davar charif of the olives. That's going to draw tam out of the mortar and pestle, and the chametz stick tam is going to go into the olives. Veleka shishim bazesim neged atam. And we do not assume that you have shishim in the olives against the tam that's coming out of the mortar. Because the rule that we've said many times is that a pot, a keli, does not hold, it doesn't contain shishim keneged itself. So if you filled up the mortar with olives, that you don't have shishim in the olives keneged the tam of the keli, of the mortar. So the chametz stick tam in the mortar is now going to be transferred into these asim. So if you're lighting with olive oil that was processed in a chametz stick keli before Pesach, now you have to worry that this olive oil will have tam chametz in it. Therefore, if you're going to light a lamp with this olive oil, you got to keep it away from the table. Shalayatif almine Michael, to make sure that it will not drip onto your foodstuffs. So just to be clear, if somebody's listening to this but they're not following 100% closely, don't worry. We're not saying over here that olive oil is always not kosher lePesach. You can have kosher lePesach olive oil. We're not saying that olives are kitniyos. Olive is not kitniyos. It's just that all the Mishnah Berurah is doing is, we said that you could take, let's say, corn oil. You're allowed to light a lamp using kitniyos oil because there's no Isser Hana on kitniyos. And then we had the second point, and that is that if you do light a lamp using kitniyos oil, you could light it even near your table, and you don't have to worry that some of that kitniyos is going to drip on your food, because that chumrah we don't have. We don't have a chumrah on taruvis of kitniyos, so we don't have to worry about that. Once we mention that, the Chavetz Chaim is telling you there are times that you have to worry that oil that you'll use for a lamp may have blias of chametz in it. So for instance, if you had olives, which are a davar charif, and you pressed those olives in a mortar and pestle that you had used all year for chametz, so now the olive is a davar charif, and you have the duchka of the machteshes, so now tam chametz will go from that mortar into the oil. Now you have oil that has blias of tam chametz in it. Such oil, if you're going to light that in a lamp, you have to keep it away from your table. That's a recap of what the Mishnah Berurah had said over here. Now we continue with the Ramah. So if you turn back to Mem Zayin Amud Aleph on the bottom line. No, we did this already. Now we continue the Ramah on top of Mem Zayin Amud Beis. You're allowed to maintain kitniyos in your house. There's no halacha of beer kitniyos. You don't have to get all kitniyos out of your house before Pesach. Says the Mishnah Berurah is cutting Yud Beis. V'chein motor lahashois. V'tzayin loymar. What the Ramah wants to tell you is, afilu naflo aleihen mayim. Even if your kitniyos was exposed to water, the bishar tfua kahagavna also lahashois. If you had chameshes mine dagon, if you had grain that was exposed to water, you're not allowed to keep that in your house because it becomes chametz. But if you have corn or if you have other types of kitniyos, you have beans that got wet, you don't have to say, "Oh, I better get this out of my house on Pesach." No, there's no gzera. The only minig to aser kitniyos is to eat kitniyos. And you're allowed to have hana out of kitniyos, any kind of hana. Says the Ramah Viter. Vezera akliza, the seeds of akliza, which I have heard translated as dill. Va'anis, or anis seed, or va'aliander, coriander seed. Einon mine kitniyos. The Ramah says these are not called kitniyos. Umutter la'achlan b'Pesach. You're allowed to eat them on Pesach. Kein nira li. The Ramah says that's how it seems to him that these are not considered kitniyos. Says the Mishnah Berurah is cutting Yud Gimel. Umutter la'achlan b'Pesach. You're allowed to eat this dill and anis or coriander. You're allowed to eat them on Pesach. However, umikamakam tzrichin bedika. The Chavetz Chaim says they would have to be checked. Shelo yisarev bahen echad mechamisha minim. You would have to check them to make sure that you don't have some of the 5 of species of grain mixed in with these seeds. It seems that was a common problem. That was something that very easily could happen in those days. So you would have to check these seeds to make sure there's no seeds of the chamisha mine dagon. Valkain yeshayrim detav lahachmer shaloi lechal anis v'kimel ad yom ha'achrein. The Chavetz Chaim says because of this, there are those that say, despite what the Ramah just said, that specifically anis and kimel, I don't know what kimel is, should not be eaten until achrein shel Pesach, ki efshar levarim yofeh, because it's not possible to check them well. V'ayin b'taz v'chayk Yaakov bazeh, and you should look at the taz and the chayk Yaakov. Interestingly enough, the Rishiva Zatzal, Rav Moshe Zechet Tzaddik V'Kadosh Levracha, in the Igris Moshe, he pulls from this Ramah. He seems to use this Ramah as the source to prove that the Isser of kitniyos, Rav Moshe says, don't make a mistake. Don't think that the Gzera of kitniyos is that anything that they make flour out of, you're not allowed to eat on Pesach. Because what did we say yesterday? We said one of the reasons for the Gzera of kitniyos is that these species, something like rice, it was common to make flour and make bread out of them. So now, if we're going to allow you to use rice on Pesach, you're going to have an amoritz, or what we said yesterday, a hedyot. You're going to have a fool who doesn't understand that there's a difference between rice bread and wheat bread. He doesn't understand there's a difference between cornbread and wheat bread. So he's going to see somebody eating cornbread. He's going to say, oh, if you're allowed to eat cornbread, you're allowed to eat wheat bread. So to stay away from that mistake, we made a gzera against kitniyos. Now, somebody might come along and say, oh, so that means anything that people grind up and make a flour out of and make baked goods out of, maybe those all fall into the gzera of kitniyos. Now, if that was true, throw out all of your potato starch cakes, right? What do we do with potato starch? We get the starch out of the potatoes, we make a flour, and it really looks like a flour, and we make beautiful looking cakes, and they even make bagels out of them. They make I've seen in hotels, they make a bagel out of potato starch, and you take cream cheese, you put on cream cheese and lox, and you have over there a bagel with cream cheese and lox. So you'll say, oh, you got to aser potato starch, because it's kitniyos, you make flour out of it. Rav Moshe says no, there's no isser at all against potatoes. There never was such a chumrah, there never was such an isser, and Rav Moshe says, there are those that disagree, Rav Moshe says that the gzera of kitniyos was only on specific minim, specific species. Whatever they made the gzera on, that's what the gzera is on. And he brings as a raya this Ramah. He says, because you see the Ramah says that the dill and anise and coriander, they're not minei kitniyos, and you're allowed to eat them on Pesach. And you see that the Chavetz Chaim says here that there is room to worry about, specifically he mentions the anise, that there is room to worry that they might have had dagon mixed into them. So why don't we say, oh, it falls into under the rubric of kitniyos, because another one of the reasons of kitniyos is it might have grain in it. So anything that falls under that rubric of the gzeira of kitniyos, maybe now we should aser it. So Rav Moshe says, no, it's only the species that they specifically asered, and they never asered potatoes. So since they never asered potatoes, you can make all of your beautiful baked goods out of potato starch, and it's not a problem. So too peanuts, Rav Moshe says. Peanuts were never included in the gzeira, because peanuts were not something that they had at that point in time, or in that locale when the gzeira was made. They didn't really have peanuts. So Rav Moshe says peanuts are not in the gzeira. So all of these things are not kitniyos. Kitniyos is only the things that were specifically asered when they made the gzeira of kitniyos. Okay, now we go on to Seif Beis. Says the Mechaber, Ha'oisa isa min hachitim. Ha'oisa isa min hachitim or min ha'oiris. If somebody makes a dough that's mixed out of wheat flour and rice flour, and now he wants to make a matzah. So now he's making a matzah. We said yesterday in Seif Aleph that you cannot be yotzeh the mitzvah of matzah using a matzah made out of rice flour. And we said that the reason for that is because the Gemara in Pesachim learns out from a pasuk that you could only be yotzeh the mitzvah using something that was made out of a grain that can become chametz. And something like oiriz cannot become chametz. Only the 5 species of grain, only wheat, barley, spelt, oat, rye, those are the only grains that become chametz. Rice does not become chametz. So if you make rice matzah, you cannot be yotzeh the mitzvah of achilas matzah with rice matzah, because that's not matzah. Now, says the Mechaber, what if you made a dough and you made matzah out of something that was mixed, rice flour and wheat flour? If you make a dough out of a mix of wheat flour and rice flour, says the Mechaber, im yesh ba tam dagon, if when you eat this matzah, it tastes like grain, it tastes like something made out of wheat, you can fulfill your chiyuv of eating matzah on Pesach, on the first night of Pesach, with this mixed matzah. Now remember, we're going here specifically according to the shita of the Mechaber that you're allowed to eat rice on Pesach. We're going according to the Mechaber that there's no gzeira against eating kitniyos. Certainly for us, this would be problematic. We hold you can't eat rice at all, right? The Sephardim hold you can, but the Bnei Ashkenaz, we go with the Ramah that there's an issur of kitniyos. So for us, this is not negeya. But for Sephardim, who go according to the Pesach of the Mechaber, you're allowed to eat rice. So if you have this matzah that was made out of a mixed dough, mixed rice and wheat, then the Mechaber says if it tastes like something made out of grain, you could be yotzeh the mitzvah of achilas matzah. Says the Mishnah Berurah Ois Cotton Yodalit, im yesh ba tam dagon, if it tastes like grain. Says the Mishnah Berurah, umashma, the clear implication of this Mechaber is da'afilu ein ba'isa shir chitim, even if you do not have a sufficient measurement of wheat flour in this dough, sheyehei kazayis bichtei achilas pras, so that if you would eat matzah made out of this dough for the time span of kidei achilas pras, the amount of time it takes to eat a loaf, a half a loaf, known as a pras, which halacha l'maisa we say is somewhere between 3 minutes and 9 minutes. So even if you do not have enough wheat flour in a piece of matzah of that size, the size that you would eat in that time span, you don't have a kazayas of wheat flour in there. So if you're going to eat matzah for 3-4 minutes, you will not ingest a kazayas of wheat flour. You're going to ingest a mixture of wheat flour and rice flour. So, let's say you take this matzah, and you make a bracha of al achilas matzah, and now you eat for a kedei achilas pras, you eat for that time span. Will you have ingested a kazayas, which is the minimum share to be yotze the mitzvah? Will you have ingested a kazayas of wheat matzah? No, you will not have. You will only have eaten, let's say, a half of a kazayas of wheat and a half a kazayas of barley. Still, says the Mishnah Berurah here, the implication of the Mechaber, what did the Mechaber say? The Mechaber says the prerequisite is that it should taste like dagon. The Mechaber did not say that the prerequisite is that there has to be enough wheat flour that you ate a kazayas of wheat flour. He said the prerequisite is the taste. So therefore, says the Mishnah Berurah, mashma, the clear implication is that even if you do not have a measurement of wheat flour in this mixture, so that if you eat this matzah for the time span of kedei achilas pras, you will eat a kazayas of wheat flour. You're still yoitza your chiyuv of achilas matzah as long as you ate a kazayas of this matzah. So again, you didn't eat a kazayas of wheat matzah, but you ate of wheat flour, but you ate a kazayas of this blended matzah. If it tastes like dagon, you're yoitza the mitzvah, according to the Mechaber. Even though the main ingredient over here is the rice flour. And with rice flour, you really can't be yaitz the mitzvah of achilas matzah, like we said earlier, because rice doesn't become chametz. Still in all, you would be yaitz the mitzvah according to the Mechaber. Why? Shani hacha keven shemechubarim biyachad. Since by making a dough out of this wheat flour and this rice flour, you mixed them thoroughly together. Teva ha'oiriz, it is the nature of the rice, lihiyos nigrar achar hachitim, that it gets dragged after the wheat. Ukishemes chametz hachitim, and when the wheat would potentially, theoretically, if the wheat would become chametz, meschametz gam keina oiriz. Even though rice normally is not machmetz, even though we said you can't be yaitze typically with matzah made out of rice flour, because rice doesn't become chametz, but when you knead it together with wheat flour in a dough, the rice takes on the nature of the wheat, and now, if the wheat would become chametz, the rice would also become chametz. Ulahachi dinoi kechitim. And now, this entire matzah gets a din of wheat matzah, which is so interesting, because again, what we're showing you over here is, you're going to be yaitze the mitzvah of achilas matzah, even though you did not eat a kazayas of wheat flour. You only had a kazayas of barley flour. It doesn't matter. You're still going to be yaitze the mitzvah, because we're going to say that the rice takes on the nature of the wheat. Continues the Mishnah Berurah. However, this is only true by a combination of wheat and rice. But should you mix wheat flour together with millet flour or some other kind of flour, one of the other grains, not you used millet or rice, one of these grains that we said you can't be yaitz the mitzvah with. Or let's say you went ahead and you mixed another kind of grain with rice. So let's say you used spelt flour together with rice flour. So we're giving you, he gave you two cases over here. One is you took wheat flour and you mixed it, let's say, with millet flour, right? So we said wheat flour with rice flour could work. But if you mixed wheat flour with spelt flour, that would not work. Or let's say you took spelt flour with rice flour, v'asa mimena matzah, and you made a matzah, eina yoitza b'yedei chayvasai, then you cannot be yoitza your chiyuv b'sheyesh batam dagan, even if it has a taste of wheat, of grain. Ela im ken yesh ba kemach dagan sheyeh kazayis b'chtei achilas pras. So if you mix wheat and rice, you could be yotzei the mitzvah even if you're not going to eat a kazayis of the wheat flour, as long as it has tam dagan, it tastes like grain. But if you mix spelt with rice, now you can't be yotzei the mitzvah unless you have enough spelt in there that you're going to eat a kazayis of spelt b'chdei achilas pras. Dahainu shebechal pras mimena yeheba kazayis mikemach dagan. It has to be that theoretically, if you would eat a pras, if you would eat for between 3 and 9 minutes, you would get a kazayis of the spelt. If you have that shear, then the whole dough is considered dagan, is considered spelt. So I want to be very clear, because there's a little nuance over here that's a little bit tricky. By wheat, we're saying if you mix wheat flour and rice flour, even if you don't have a kazayis b'chdei achilas pras, even if you would eat that matzah for a full 3 to 9 minutes, you still would not get a kazayis of wheat. It doesn't matter. That whole dough, if it has a taste of dagan, that whole matzah is going to be considered wheat matzah, and now you're yotzei the mitzvah, whatever kazayis you eat a kazayis of that matzah, you're yotzei the mitzvah, even though you certainly did not get a kazayis of wheat flour. If you would, let's say, mix spelt and rice, now we're saying, in order to be yotzei the mitzvah, there has to be a kazayis b'chdei achilas pras of spelt in the mixture. What does that mean? That means if you would eat for the time span of k'dei achilas pras, you would ingest a kazayis of the spelt. Now, do you have to eat for the time span of k'dei achilas pras? No. If you eat quickly, you could measure out a kazayis, and you could eat a kazayis. Now, in the kazayis that you eat, you're still not getting a kazayis of spelt. You're going to get a kazayis of blend. You're only eating a kazayis. In that kazayis, some of that kazayis is going to be spelt, some of that kazayis is going to be rice. So we're not saying that by spelt and rice, you must eat a kazayis of spelt. That's not what we're saying. We're saying, though, that there has to be a kazayis of spelt b'chdei achilos pras, in the amount of matzah that a normal person would eat in the time span of k'dei achilos pras, there has to be a kazayis of spelt. Once you have that share of spelt in the mixture, now the entire matzah is considered spelt, and if you eat a kazayis, you're yotzei the mitzvah. I was finding the place here. Okay, that's the first opinion. Now the Mishnah Berurah continues with a dissenting opinion. However, those that say even by a mixture, even by a blend of wheat and rice, you cannot fulfill your chiyuv of eating matzah, even by wheat and rice. You have to have enough wheat in the blend that there's a kazayis of chitim b'chdei achilas pras. Dagan, and by other grains, let's say like spelt or oat, even if you have spelt, that you have a kazayis b'chdei achilas pras, that would not give the entire matzah a din of spelt. Ela im ken yesh roiv dagan. It has to be roiv, has to be spelt. Umiyat ayriz ayshar minim. Da'az batal ayriz beruba. Then we would say that the rice is batal beroiv. Ve'evi kekula dagan. And then we would look at the entire matzah as being a min dagan. U'lechatchila nachal hakmer b'shal tayrik isfar achreina. To fulfill your midaraisa obligation to eat matzah on the first night of Pesach, we would be machmer like this later opinion. So we would say that if you're eating a matzah that's a combination of wheat and rice, you would have to have enough wheat in the mixture that you have a kazayis b'chdei achilas pras. And if you were using something like spelt and rice, it would have to be roiv spelt. Rishayna, if it's a real shasat chak, you could rely on the first more kuladik opinion. We will stop over here. Thank you so much. Unfortunately, we couldn't do the share live today because of Megillah reading tonight. It's not unfortunate that there's Megillah reading tonight, but we couldn't do the share live. Mirza Hashem, I will try to post a share tomorrow as well. Everyone should have a freilich and Purim. Enjoy. Be well.